There is no escape from what we are. We can hide behind masks, but the truth always bleeds through.
Jeanette Vorman, Clan Malkavian.
Greetings, Explorer. Vampire the Masquerade, for my taste, is one of the coolest concepts of a secret vampire society, which also had one of the best ever written lore bases. However, in order to properly understand it, one must first delve into the tumultuous history of the kindred, as vampires call themselves, in the world of darkness. It was described in the original tabletop RPG released in 1991 and created by Mark Reinhagen. Years later it received most of its fanbase, becoming much more well known and famous because of the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines action RPG video game, released in 2004. So, let's delve a bit into darkness and explore it today, together. In the world of darkness, the origin of vampires is steeped in ancient legend, tied to biblical figures and events. It is an essential basis to understand the further evolution of vampire society in future. And this tale, known as the Cainite myth, tells the story of the first vampire, Cain, and how his curse spreads through the generations. The history of Cain is chronicled across various ancient texts, including the Book of Nod, the Ersias fragments, the Lilithian, and the Luciferian. While each offers different interpretations of Cain's motives, they all agree on one pivotal event: Cain's murder of his brother Abel. The Luciferian recounts how Cain deluded himself into believing that this act of murder was one of love rather than hate, turning his shame into pride and leading to his exile. Vampire scholar Beckett adds another layer to this mythology, interpreting the story as a conflict between ancient farmer and hunter tribes. Cain, a farmer, once presented an offering of his finest crops to God, as did Abel with his best livestock. Whether due to a disagreement or divine preference for Abel's offering, the result was tragic. Cain sacrificed his brother as an offering to God, believing it to be the most precious thing he could ever give. His father, Adam, cursed him with a mark upon his flesh and cast him into exile, condemning him to wander the land of Nod in darkness. In the desolate land of Nod, somewhere in the east, Cain encountered Lilith, who recognized in him a dark, murderous power. Lilith, the first woman and former wife of Adam, welcomed Cain into her home and eventually into her bed. She possessed incredible magic, which Cain desired. Cain pleaded for her gifts, and Lilith prepared a ritual, cutting herself and offering her blood for him to drink. After consuming her blood, Cain experienced a vision in which 3 angels, agents of God, visited him. Each angel gave Cain the opportunity to repent for Abel's murder, but his pride led him to refuse. In response, Michael cursed him and his progeny to fear flame. Raphael cursed them to fear the sun, and Uriel cursed them to eternal hunger for blood, to cling to darkness, and to be forever frozen in death. Gabriel appeared with a final message: the path to salvation through Golconda, a mystical state of enlightenment, where a vampire is no longer subject to the beast, or alternatively, the beast and human aspects of a vampire are in balance. The beast is an innate demonic predator that awakens within each and every vampire upon their embrace. And embrace is a ritual of giving birth to vampire. The creator is called Sire, empties a human body of blood, and gives it to drink their own blood, creating a vampire childer. Also childer are often called as fledglings. Anyway, awakened by these revelations, Cain gained powers that became known as disciplines. Potence is a discipline that endows vampires with physical vigor and preternatural strengths. Vampires with the Potence discipline possess physical prowess beyond mortal boons. Fortitude is a discipline that grants kindred unearthly toughness, even to the point of resisting fire and sunlight. Obfuscate is a discipline that allows vampires to conceal themselves, deceive the mind of others, or make them ignore what the user does not want to be seen. Dominate is a discipline that overwhelms another's person mind with the vampire's will, forcing victim to think or act according to the vampire's decree. Presence is a discipline of supernatural allure and emotional manipulation which allows kindred to attract, sway, and control crowds. Prothean is a discipline that gives vampires the ability to change form, from growing feral clothes to evaporating into a cloud of mist. Animalism is a discipline that brings the vampire closer to their animalistic nature. This not only allows to communicate with and gain dominance over creatures of nature, but gives them influence over the beast itself. Auspex is a discipline that grants vampires supernatural senses. Celerity is a discipline that grants vampires supernatural quickness and reflexes. Cain also discovered the path of blood, which later on will be known as thaumaturgy, or blood magic, practiced by clan Tremere. However, all this would guide Cain in his new existence. Yet despite his new abilities, he severed his bond with Lilith and left her behind. He eventually found himself in a small agricultural community called Ubar, inhabited by the descendants of his younger brother Seth. The people of Ubar, awed and terrified by Cain's power, began to worship him as a divine being. King Enoch, sensing Cain's majesty, relinquished his throne so that the Dark Father could rule. Toreador's clan legends speak of Cain's early years in the city, recalling a couple deeply in love, whose affections stirred his own loneliness. Hoping to preserve their love for eternity, Cain embraced them, gifting them immortality. But the curse of vampirism soon revealed its cruelty. The lovers realized they could never have children. In despair, they met their final death by walking into the dawn, leaving Cain heartbroken. He forbade anyone from speaking their names, erasing them from history. Though still haunted by Uriel's warning, Cain embraced Enoch, making him the first of his children. He soon followed with two more, Irad, a mighty warrior, and Zilla, whose beauty captivated him. However, Zilla's reluctance to return his affections led Cain to seek the magic of Kron, a mystical apocryphal creature of unknown origin, who tricked him into forming a blood bond with her. Through this bond, Cain learned the power of blood to enslave others, a discovery that would change the course of his lineage. With his three children, Enoch, Irad, and Zilla, Cain declared Ubar the city of Enoch, the first city of vampires. Once having wandered throughout the cradle of civilization, he was able to bring Sumerian technology, namely the wheel.
You're goddamn right.
Being a farmer most of his life, Cain had cultivated wondrous and perfect growth. So, for generations under Cain's rule, the economy prospered and the city became a mighty empire. The third generation, antediluvians, even built statues, shrines, temples, a grand library, and pools, all surrounding a large 5-level palace that Cain ruled from, upon his lofty ivory throne. But prosperity was not to last. The great flood, known as Deluge, destroyed the city of Enoch, wiping out the children of Seth. Despondent, Cain vanished into obscurity. His surviving descendants, the antediluvians, sought him out, but when they found him, Cain rejected them, leaving them to fend for themselves. It was then that the antediluvians turned on Cain's second generation children, killing them in a brutal uprising. Upon discovering this betrayal, Cain sought out the antediluvians, who had built a new settlement known as the Second City. In his wrath, the Dark Father cursed his descendants, bestowing upon each clan the unique weaknesses they would carry for eternity. He went into exile again, and his fate remains a mystery, though many believe he still wanders the earth. According to nudist mythology, there are claims that Cain will return at the end of time to judge his descendants, the antediluvians, and all vampires descended from them. This event is known as Gehenna, the end of all vampiric races. Nudism is the study of lore pertaining to Cain and Enoch. The term itself derives from the mythical land of Nod, a mythical place east of Eden, to where Cain was banished after the murder of his brother Abel. From this myth evolved the Book of Nod, which is a collection of ancient texts viewed as sacred to Nodist Cainites. Their scholars are also generally interested in the activities of the antediluvians and Gehenna. After the Great Flood, the surviving antediluvians and their children established new cities, spreading across the world. They became the progenitors of the vampire clans, each one bearing the mark of their antediluvian ancestor. The bloodlines grew and multiplied, and the curse of Cain spread across the globe, giving rise to the complex and secretive society of vampires that exists in the modern era. Through centuries, the Night Society has grown and evolved, creating 13 great clans, descendants of antediluvians themselves. A kindred's clan represents their lineage, the vampiric family into which they were brought through the embrace. These clans trace their origin back to their antediluvian progenitors. Kindred society acknowledged 13 primary clans, although some may have vanished over time. Others may operate in secrecy, and some may remain entirely unknown. Like all bloodlines, each clan shares a set of 3 core disciplines, a unique clan weakness that affects its members, and certain stereotypes based on the types of individuals commonly embraced. Clans distinct from smaller bloodlines are defined by their numbers and influence. Their association with an antediluvian forebear, a lineage that stretches back to the Second City, and weaknesses believed to be passed down from Cain himself. To the uninformed, differences between the clans are rarely noticed, and most non-vampires regard all kindred as similar, seeing them as descendants of a common ancestor, Cain. However, within their society, lineage and clan distinction hold immense weight, particularly among the elders, who know their full ancestry. In the Dark Ages, the divide between high and low clans determined social status, with one's lineage influencing opportunities for advancement and respect. These divisions later evolved into the split between sects like Camarilla, Sabbath, and independent clans. The Camarilla stands as the most structured and influential of the vampiric sects, an exclusive society that upholds tradition and maintains control over the mortal world from the shadows. Throughout their domains, they strictly enforce 6 key traditions, with the Masquerade being paramount among them. While all clans hold some representation within this ivory tower, a select few pillar clans form the backbone of its membership. In the past, the Camarilla welcomed any kindred willing to abide by its rules, but recent developments have led the leadership to adopt more stringent entry policies. In many Camarilla-controlled territories, anarchs, caitiffs, and sin-blooded vampires are no longer permitted to exist. The Sabbath is a loose organization of Cainites who reject the traditions. Unlike the Camarilla, the Sabbath believes in the antediluvians and Cain, also known as the Sword of Cain, as they believe they will be the army Cain will use to destroy the antediluvians once Gehenna arrives. The traditions are the fundamental laws of kindred society, supposedly handed down by Cain himself. The 6 traditions serve as the foundation of vampiric law. Masquerade conceals the existence of vampires from mortals. Domain. A kindred's hunting ground is their personal territory, which they control absolutely. Progeny. The creation of new vampires requires the permission of one's elders. Accounting. Until they are released, a child's actions are the responsibility of their sire. Hospitality. Respect the domains of others and formally represent oneself to the ruler of any domain you visit. Destruction. Only the elder of a community has the authority to kill kindred, and only they may declare a blood hunt. These traditions form the legal backbone of Camarilla society. In modern nights, the role of elder is often fulfilled by a prince, and the prince is a vampire who has claimed leadership over a domain, usually a single city. Much of vampiric culture stems from these traditions. Hospitality governs formal introductions, destruction defines the blood hunt, and domain dictates territorial control. For understanding, a blood hunt is an order given by a Camarilla official, calling for the destruction of another vampire. When such order is given by a Sabbath official, the procedure is called a wild hunt instead. Anarchs are vampires who reject the status quo of Cainite society. The resulting organization of anarchs is called the Anarch Movement, whose traditional stronghold are Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and Berlin in Europe. Caitiff is a complicated term with 2 general meanings. The first meaning is more of a political term, those of a flawed or unknown lineage who have been abandoned by their sires. It is not so much that they lack a clan as they lack the support that comes with the clan structure. It carries the implication that they were a mistake by their sire. Many of these unfortunates are considered caitiff simply because they do not know which clan they come from, because they had not been told. It is an arbitrary title and may refer more specifically to any outcast. The second and more biologically oriented caitiff, also known as the clanless, are rare cainites that do not officially belong to any clan. These vampires have no inherent clan weaknesses, but no inherent disciplines as well. None of the typical clan markers apply to them, although the caitiff have manifested throughout history, they tend to do so more frequently among the higher generations, such that the term caitiff and thin-blooded are often considered synonymous. While there is considerable overlap, not all caitiff are thin-bloods. Thin-blooded or duskborn are terms primarily used to refer to caitiff and vampires of the 14th or higher generations. It is important to understand that the generation is an indication of how far a vampire is removed from Cain, the original vampire. When a sire embraces, their child rises from death one generation higher than them, one more generation removed from Cain. The clan founders comprised the third generation. Their progeny became the fourth generation. Their child heir became the fifth generation, and so on and so forth up through the distant 13th generation, prevalent in the modern night. The Ashira, derived from the Arabic word Ashira meaning clan, is a sect of Islamic vampires who profess their faith in Allah and have held dominion over Arabia and North Africa since the Dark Ages. The members of the Ashira believe that Muhammad offered kindred the chance for redemption if they choose to follow Allah. While some, such as the Baiti Mutasharid, are devout followers of Islam, most kindred within the Ashira adhere to the faith more for practicality or to ease their dealings with the Middle East. Much like the Camarilla or Sabbath, the Ashira is not immune to political schemes and power struggles. Each clan possesses its own structure and traditions valued by its members. Although vampires rarely sacrifice for fellow clanmates, a sense of shared blood often fosters some level of mutual preferences. Moreover, clans often unite for political reasons, presenting a collective front in cities' political arenas, such as through the Primogen Council. And Primogen is a term used to describe Camarilla officials that, at least in theory, serve as the representatives of their respective clans to the prince of the city ruled by the sect. However, beneath these facades, internal conflicts often simmer, and threatening all members of a clan as alike is considered naive. Depending on the edition of the tabletop and general plot progressions, there is a conception of metaplot, which indicates most significant for storyline events. Some of them are considered semi-canon and some are not, so it makes the usual situation with multiple versions of canonic story canvas being a bit distorted and confusing. So let's try to figure it out from different sides. First, about structure of Camarilla according to the 5th edition of the tabletop. Inner Circle is on the top. The names of the Inner Circle remain unknown, a tactic speculated to be used to avoid revenge as it has no target and resistance cannot flourish. Justicars. With only 5 clans remaining within the tower, the Justicars hold most responsibility and power than ever. Each are selected to a 13-year term and few, save for the Ventru, serve more than one. They decide the matters of war and law, and act as the voice of the Inner Circle. Beyond these tasks, they also uphold the traditions. With their title, they are able to control any assets or resources of the Camarilla, at will. This also includes its members. When the majority of Clan Gangrel and Clan Bruja departed from the sect, their Justicars were removed. Though there are rumors spreading that a neutral kindred will soon be appointed as Justicar of outsiders to represent the anti-tribu and officially unaffiliated clans. About anti-tribu we will talk later. The current Justicars are Juliet Parr of Clan Malkavian, and former sheriff of North London, Molly MacDonald of Clan Nosferatu, Diana Iadanza of Clan Toreador and Bane of Clan Gangrel, Ian Carfax of Clan Tremere and former Archon of Karl Schrecht until 2021, Lucinda of Clan Ventru, titled Justicar for Unlife in 2018. Until the mass departure, the representatives for Clan Gangrel and Clan Bruja were Geoffrey Late and Manuela Cardozo Piento. Beneath the Justicar are the Archons, who, against what one might think, are more than simple hired killers. While they are elite hired killers and warriors, they are also scholars and investigators. Each Archon is hand-selected by Justicar and given only one chance to deny the opportunity. Should they take it, they will be enforcing Camarilla law, seeking out secrets or spying on enemies of the tower. Some may operate alone and others work within coteries. Often Justicars will blood bond their Archons to themselves or to each other. Even if they are not bound to anyone by blood, they still have less freedom of action than the Justicars. They can expect to be obeyed when they order the final death of a kindred. Due to this, Archons can destroy an entire domain without an explanation. Prince. Within a domain, the prince sits at the top, a vampire so impressive or cunning enough to be acknowledged as the leader. Primogen. Beneath the prince is their council of Primogen, built up of representatives often from different clans and representatives of the major Camarilla factions. They may be clan elders or those who hold the largest hunting grounds. They speak directly to the prince and give their own advice. Due to the beckoning and the damage it has caused to domains, some Primogen councils now operate on a rotational basis and others have limited their size to only 3 or 5 members, which will force an odd number and force votes to pass. Beckoning is a mysterious force calling the elders away from their domain, even the elders that have taken their position as princes in Camarilla domains. In smaller domains, there might even be a rule that council members must be under a century of age, believing that clan representatives should be more in touch with contemporary culture and neonate ideals or priorities. The duties of Primogen are as follows: trial by jury. Although the prince has sole discretion of punishment, they may have the Primogen convened to render the verdict of innocent or guilty. Advice and consent, which occurs before the prince makes any major decision regarding the welfare of the domain. They are obliged to meet with and discuss with the Primogen. This advice can of course be ignored, but it is unwise as princes are easily replaced. Harpy Solamri once described in jest, there are 6 pedigrees of Primogen councils. The tribunal, those who see themselves as both judge and jury and work endlessly to find the guilty and punish them. The circle, the Primogens who are obsessed with equality and keeping balance. The directors, with no time for frivolity, they do not see court to be worth the time and focus solely on business. The patricians, Primogens who are convinced they are the most important kindred within the domain and have inflated opinions of their status. The Union, those who believe themselves as representatives of those without a voice and speak up for the common ancilla. From Latin ancilla, maid or slave girl. The Covert Committee, Primogens who do not attend court and rarely meet in person. They are elders, and while they are still interested in politics, they primarily interact with each other and the prince through letters and other proxies. Primogen examples: Stephen Thunderhorse of Clan Ventru, 13th generation neonate who represents the new money and is known for his energy and bombastic manner as well as his way over kindred and kind. He resides in Rhode Island. Seneschal. Sometimes a prince will select a seneschal or personal advisor to sit with them and, in some cases, act as a replacement when the prince is unavailable. Order is held by the domain's sheriff, a kindred who acts more of a hitman than a policing force, as a Camarilla frowns upon modern ideas like due process. Most executions take place without a trial or the victim's ability to speak against the crimes they've been blamed for. Regarding major clans, the situation is a bit different. Since of 5th edition of Vampire the Masquerade and basic White Wolf publishing wiki, information is different too. One tells about 13 major clans and the second about 14, so to make it exhaustive but not too much, I will talk about all of them, at least what is supposed to be available at the moment. Camarilla clans. The Camarilla, a prominent vampire sect, is composed of 7 distinct clans. With the introduction of 5th edition of the tabletop, new alliances and rivalries are reshaping the Ivory Tower. Here is a closer look at these clans. Banu Hakim, formerly known as Assamites. The Banu Hakim are a secretive cult of assassins based in the mountain fortress of Alamut in the Middle East. Descended from Cain's judge, they accept assassination contracts against vampires while pursuing their own obscure goals. The Banu Hakim are organized into 3 castes, each with unique weaknesses. They joined the Camarilla following the onset of the Second Inquisition. Malkavian. They are known for their mental instability, with each member afflicted by a unique form of madness. This madness doesn't negate their intelligence or insight, but it influences their actions from the moment of their embrace. Many Malkavians display signs of post-trauma from their mortal lives. Nosferatu. Marked by their hideous deformities, Nosferatu are universally repulsive in appearance. They shun other vampires, living in sewers and maintaining a low profile. Renowned as information brokers, Nosferatu have taken on roles as enforcers and assassins since the Gangrel's departure from the Camarilla. Despite their loyalty to the Camarilla, they prioritize clan over sect, protecting their own kind regardless of affiliation. Toreador. They are captivated by art and beauty, often losing themselves in their aesthetic pursuits. This obsession can sometimes lead to their downfall, as their desire for beauty can become all-consuming, occasionally even to fatal extremes. Tremere. Originally hermetic magicians from Ars Magica, who became vampires to safeguard their magic. The Tremere have evolved from outcasts to key figures within Camarilla society since the 11th century. They are formidable practitioners of thaumaturgy, but remain highly organized and paranoid. Only the original house of Tremere remains loyal to the Camarilla, with other major houses scattered worldwide. Ventru. Known as the Clan of Kings, the Ventru are the leaders of the Camarilla. They include businessmen, aristocrats, monarchs, and other figures of power. Ventru are meticulous about their choices in embrace and feeding, each feeding exclusively from a specific type of prey. They are predominant among princes and have seen their anarch counterparts rise as barons since the Second Inquisition. La Sombra. Once leaders of the Sabbath, the La Sombra killed their own antediluvian during the Anarch Revolt and fought against the nascent Camarilla. They are known for their elegance, power, and cruel predatory nature, Masters of shadow manipulation, the Sombra cast no reflections. They sought reconciliation with the Camarilla in the mid-2010s and have since joined their ranks. Sabbath clans. The Sabbath, a faction of the Kindred, was originally diverse but has become dominated by a single clan since the Second Inquisition. The Miske, originating from Eastern Europe, they were once absolute rulers of their territories. They are among the least human of vampires, exhibiting extreme cruelty and madness, with the most potent shape-shifting abilities. They can manipulate flesh and bone like clay, and crave the stability of their ancestral grave earth. Anarch movement. Emerging from the Anarch revolts, the Anarch movement now represents the mainstream of Kindred society. It is characterized by a more hand-off leadership style and embraces all clans, with notable representatives from the following. Bruja. Once warrior philosophers, the Bruja have evolved into rebels, activists, and roughnecks. Known for their combat prowess and charisma, they are prone to frenzy. Many Bruja lead the Anarch movement, though some still align with the Camarilla or remain independent. The Ministry, previously known as followers of Set or Setites. They believe they are descendants from the Egyptian god Set. Rebranded in 2010s, they now focus on self-worship, with Set considered to reside within each follower. They are still viewed as creatures of darkness, vulnerable to light. Independent clans. Hecata, a newest and secretive clan of necromancers who command the dead and control global financial power. The Hecata do not originate from a single antediluvian or maintain an unbroken bloodline. Instead, they are a fusion of the Giovanni, the remnants of the ancient clan Cappadocian, their associated bloodlines, and the Nagaraja, despite the latter having no direct connection to an antediluvian. The Nagaraja are a bizarre bloodline of flesh-eating vampires feared by Kindred on all sides of the Jihad. Together they represent a new, mostly ununified clan of death, comprising Kindred bloodlines who practice necromancy through the use of oblivion, much like the Giovanni that it almost entirely subsumes. It is also a family, albeit a much more extended one, with the Banu Hakim joining the Camarilla and the Ministry joining the Anarchs. The Hecata are the last independent clan of significance in contemporary Knights. Giovanni, a powerful and wealthy clan of Venetian necromancers, emerged in the 15th century. Originally Cappadocians, they were purged by Augustus Giovanni, who diablerized his sire. Diabliri, also called the Amarans, is the term used by vampires to describe the act of drinking another Cainite's blood and drawing their soul into one's own. The Giovanni are notorious for their painful feeding practices and were severely impacted by the Second Inquisition, retreating to their homelands. Ravnos. Native to the Indian subcontinent, the Ravnos are embroiled in a genocidal conflict with India's Kathayans. They were first seen in the West as gypsies and are known for their complex philosophy and vices. During the Week of Nightmares, their antediluvian nearly wiped them out, leaving only a few hidden survivors. Gangrel. Nomadic and shape-shifting, the Gangrel are unique among vampires for their frequent travels outside of cities. They possess the discipline of Prothean, often acquiring animal traits when they frenzy. Since the late 90s, most Gangrel have become independent, with some aligning with the Honors, and a few remaining within the Camarilla. Ashira clans. The Ashira, derived from the Arabic word for brethren, is the sect under which Islamic vampires profess their faith in Allah. Since the Dark Ages, the Ashira has governed Arabia and Northern Africa. Members of the Ashira believed that redemption for kindred was one of the promises made by their prophet Muhammad, should they choose to follow Allah. The Ashira encompasses the following clans. Banu Hakim, Assamites, is the name by which the sons of Hakim were known by the Islamic population during the medieval times. Many of the Banu Hakim worked hand in hand with the Ashira to keep the Europeans out, especially since the majority of the clan was Muslim. Al-Amin of Salubri clan, literally the virtuous ones. For centuries they kept watch on the Baali bloodline of vampires associated with demon worship from North Africa to Asia, usually disguising themselves as members of other clans. They are protected as long as they live in Ashira territory, and their numbers never surpass 7. Bait Majnun from Malkavians. They are basically Malkavians of the Ashira, whose legends tell that Malkav, or Marid as they call him, sought to understand the secrets of the jinn. Every time a Majnun creates a childer, a small portent of the jinn is fused to the recipient, turning them insane and allowing them to see the world of spirits. The voice of this jinn then guides the Majnun throughout his afterlife, growing stronger until it is ready to be divided again through another embrace. Baiti Majrim of Ravnos is the Arabian term for the clan of deceivers. Majrim literally means criminal. They were no more welcome in the Islamic world, as their vices lead them into many unwelcome confrontations with the Ashira. Bait Mushakis of clan Bruja are once declared jihad and looking to punish the Roman kindred who had destroyed the Great Experiment, also known as the Time of Babel. It was the last great experiment by Lucifer, wanted to teach humans heaven's secrets and uplift them to be God's equals. Other Mushakisins sought to use Islamic teachings to reconstruct their great experiment. Baiti Mutasharid of clan Nosferatu and bloodline of Hajj. They see themselves as the guardians of the holy sites of Islam. El Hijazi of Venturi clan claim to descend from native Arabian lineages and also rulership over several Saudi Arabian cities, including Riyadh. However, they do not have any particular differences from more mainstream Venturi that would qualify them as a bloodline. Quabilitat al-Khayal of La Sombra clan. The collective stance of the clan to them is not known, but some are protected by edicts from the Friends of the Night, also known as Amici Noctis, and are a vampiric secret society that largely governs clan La Sombra. Others have strong alliances among the local kindred. Quabilitat al-Mavt of Cappadocians were among the most learned of the kindred of those lands, but shared the fate of the Occidental Cappadocians. Ra'in al-Fen of clan Toreador, commonly nicknamed as scribes, as the majority favor calligraphers, writers and architects. They are centered in Egypt and Persia, in the best parts of the city, decorating their havens with calligraphy using verses from the Quran. For this reason, the scribes encouraged education in the Holy Scriptures to allow mortals to better understand the calligraphic arts before them. Wahshin of Gangal clan see themselves as heirs and protectors to the nomadic Bedouin tribes, of North Africa and Arabia. They are believed to have been descended from a single vampire, the fifth generation Methuselah Zayat. Methuselah, his death shall send, death of sword, man of the javelin in Hebrew, is a fourth or fifth generation elder who has existed for at least a millennium. Libon. The term Libon refers to African Kainites and their rich, diverse culture. They are divided into many legacies, which originate from traditional clans and bloodlines. It should be noted that simply because a given legacy has descended from a parent clan, it may not necessarily fulfill the same societal niche. The Libon includes Akunansi, takes their name and nature from the myths of the wise spider of many African folk tales. Nicknames: Weavers, parent clan, Gangrel. Followers of Set, who believe their founder was the Egyptian god Set, African variant of Ministry clan. Gurahi, taking their name from the Gambian god from whom they claim to descend, the Gurahi believe themselves to be the masters of Africa, the rightful rulers of its lands and people. Nickname: Kings, parent clan, Nosferatu. Ishtari, claim to be the descendant from the Babylonian goddess Ishtar, but currently lacks the personal connection with Africa that the similar Gurahi have. Parent clan Toreador, nickname Gluttons. Kinyoni, take their name from the Luganda word for bird, reflecting their tendencies to constantly travel even more than the knowledge-seeking Akunansi. Parent clan Ravnos. Negloper, taking their name from the Khoikhoi word for evil sorcerer. They allow the beast to dominate them, leading them into causing any debauchery one can imagine, and somewhere only thought possible to be in nightmares. Nicknames: The Horrors, parent clan Tsemiskia. Osebo take their name from the famous leopard of West Ashanti legend. Although they are proud of their traditions and will defend them stubbornly, they depend on other Laibon, particularly the Kurahi, as a focus for their energies. Nicknames: The Pride, parent clan Bruja. Shango, worshippers of Shango, the Yoruba god of storms. They are perhaps the most civilized legacy of Libon next to the aristocratic Gurahi. Nicknames: Judges, parent clan Esamite. Zidundu, taking their name from the Bavili word for shadow, the Zidundu originally hailed from the Congo until a raid gone wrong and forced them from their homelands. They now make their home among the Maasai people of Eastern Africa. Nicknames: The Shadows, parent clan La Sombra. Mlawatu, as a whole, are already removed from their humanity. They still maintain a healthy respect for the dead, as many African customs demand. The Mlawatu, however, are not content to merely communicate with dead ancestors. They seek to control them, in body and soul. Nickname: Ghost Eaters, parent clan Cappadocians. Nkulu Zao, the childer of the nearly extinct line of Zaolat, also known as Saulot, the dragon, or the warlord, was an antediluvian who was diablerized by Tremere, possibly voluntarily, in 1133. Nickname: Soul Suckers, parent clan Salubri. Bonsam. Bestial hunters who share a connection to the primal darkness were virtually unknown to Western vampires until a number of them emerged from seclusion deep within Africa in the early to mid-13th century, fleeing from an unknown threat. They are masters of Abomvi, a discipline that channels the beast in themselves and others. Nicknamed Unseen Stalkers. Parent clan uncertain, possibly Nosferatu. Impundulu. Each Impundulu lived with one or more Bomkazi witches in their residence of choice and only feed from them. The Bomkazi could use their life magic to heal, thus each Impundulu required only a small herd, sometimes just one Bomkazi. Both of them were unbondable and powerful in their own magic. This was a purely voluntary relationship, faction independent. Ramanga typically maintained the facade of a humble servant, gently guiding people for their own good, while controlling kings and queens like a puppet masters. Dead clans. Certain clans are believed to be extinct. Salubri, known as the clan of Saulot, the Salubri were renowned healers and demon fighters. Following the Tremir's transformation into vampires, the founder Tremir diablerized Saulot and launched a campaign against the Salubri, branding them as demon worshippers and soul stealers. Today, only a few Salubri remain. Cappadocians, originally the clan of death. The Cappadocians were monastic vampires dedicated to studying death, the soul, and the embrace. Augustus Giovanni Coop destroyed the Cappadocians. They were noted for their corpse-like appearance, even more so than other vampires. Bloodlines and Anti-Tribu. In addition to 13 main clans and various bloodlines, are offshoots or mutations of existing clans. These bloodlines are generally small and politically insignificant. Examples include the Daughters of Cacophony, Kia Sid, and Samedi. The Sabbath has two major clans, but in addition, members of the Camarilla clans have joined the Sabbath since there was a Sabbath. Actually, technically before there was a Sabbath. These clans are called Anti-Tribu and usually differ slightly from their parent clans, either in terms of disciplines or weaknesses. Clanless. In the world of darkness, clanless vampires, those abandoned by their sires immediately after embrace and unaware of their clan status, are increasingly common. The Camarilla refers to them as caitiff, viewing them as a sign of the Masquerade unraveling and giving them little respect. Conversely, the Sabbath embraces these clanless vampires known as Pandars. Some superstitious individuals see the rise of clanless vampires as a portent of Gehenna, the prophesied final night when all of Cain's children will be destroyed. Vampires adhere to customs that blend aspects of their undead nature with the social contract ratified nightly among the courts of the damned. While not all vampires respect the traditions, particularly the Sabbath, which criticizes their flaws, most observe them to some degree. This is especially true of the Masquerade, as even the Sabbath and Anarchs lack the power to withstand a world where mortals discover the undead. Interpreting and enforcing the traditions fall to the Cainite rulers. Though titles and traditions may vary in non-Camarilla domains, the core principle remains: an undead authority sets the rules, and defiance brings severe consequences. The Masquerade is an organized disinformation campaign heavily enforced by kindred society, particularly the Camarilla, designed to convince humans that vampires and other supernatural creatures do not exist. It is the cornerstone of survival for the Kainites. Without it, the human populace would undoubtedly rise up and exterminate all the undead. The Masquerade is technically outlined in the traditions of kindred society. However, until 15th century, it was commonly interpreted as merely avoiding disclosure of vampiric society's nuances, the prevalence of vampires, or generally making too much noise. While certain clans, notably the Tsimiske, openly flouted the tradition, vampires in more civilized societies often adhered to it more strictly. The situation changed drastically with the Inquisition, following the Anarch Revolt. As the true numbers of vampires became evident and Rome began its campaign against the undead, the nascent Camarilla was primarily organized around the enforcement of the Masquerade. The Shadow Inquisition, also known as the Holy Inquisition against the Devil and other demons, was a secret campaign orchestrated by the Catholic Church during the Dark Medieval period. Unlike the Papal Inquisition, which was targeted at heretics, the Shadow Inquisition targeted vampires, werewolves, mages, and other servants of Satan for either destruction or salvation. At the same time, they attempted to keep the details of these creatures' existence secret from the general population to avoid mass panics. Established prior to the official onset of the Burning Days, a period of the Inquisition spanning the 14th to the 16th centuries, the Shadow Inquisition was tasked with investigating supernatural evil and gathering extensive information on it. Comprising several orders, united by papal decree, the Shadow Inquisition persisted until the formation of the official Inquisition. At that point, the Shadow Inquisition was dissolved, and its various orders, either integrated and reorganized, seceded, or faced persecution themselves. The 5 orders of the Shadow Inquisition during the Dark Ages were Knights of Acre, Red Order, Oculi Dei, Sisters of St. John, House of Murnau. The First Inquisition was active during what is known as the Burning Times. It swept across Europe, forcing many supernatural beings into hiding. Some inquisitors were unaware they were targeting supernatural entities, resulting in the tragic deaths of numerous innocents alongside the true threats. Remnants of this Inquisition survived as a Society of Leopold, which persisted into the Final Nights. In Kainite eschatology, the Final Nights are the nights before the coming of Gehenna and the end of vampires. Much of the basis for belief in the Final Nights originates with Nodist lore, and specifically the Book of Nod. The Final Nights are supposed to be predated by several signs which indicate great changes in Kainite society and the imminent waking of the antediluvians, such as a rise in the number of thin-blooded vampires, princedoms ruled by caitiff, Kuei Jin invading the West. Kuei Jin are the vampires of East and Southern Asia, the karmically cursed outcasts dwelling on the Middle Kingdom fringe. Other terms to describe them include Wan Kuei, Wan Zhan, Gui Ren, Asuratizaya in India, or simply the Hungry Dead. The Second Inquisition was a 21st century phenomenon. It represents a coalition of intelligent agencies and remaining witch hunters from the Vatican. It has succeeded in driving major supernatural sects into a defensive stance, destroyed the headquarters of Clan Tremere, and emerged as one of the greatest threats to the supernatural world. The other reason for enforcing Masquerade was an anarch revolt, which refers to an instance where large numbers of younger vampires rebel against their elders, either because they no longer wish to be manipulated by the older Kainites or they wish to take the elders' power for themselves. There were two notable anarch revolts that have shaped the history of vampires: the Great Revolt, or First Anarch Revolt, of the 15th century, and the Second Anarch Revolt of the 20th century. Sources that refer to the Anarch Revolt generally refer to this first period of conflict. In the result of these events, Masquerade stood not just only as a tradition but as a necessity for survival. History records that Raphael de Corazon's famous speech in 1450 cemented the masquerade as a Camarilla's primary policy. The speech: "Living openly among mortals have been our ruin. We violated the spirit of the sixth tradition, and we pay for it in blood. Mortals are too numerous and too jealous of our power. They will try to destroy us, as long as they know of us. It has always been so. We must turn our backs on them. We must hide our faces away from their envious eyes." Raphael de Corazon. The basics of the masquerade are enforced through self-policing and harsh penalties. When a breach occurs, the methods for remediation can vary, but punishment is inevitable. While it would be ideal for the perpetrator of the breach to face consequences, princes are known to prefer a swift resolution of a thorough investigation. A breach generally refers to any visible evidence of vampiric powers such as blood feeding, obvious use of disciplines, or regeneration in plain sight. Certain elements, like ghouls, which is term used to describe a minion created when a vampire gives a bit of vampiric vitae to a mortal without draining him or her of blood first, which would instead result in the embrace. They are always considered as a potential breaches. However, it is assumed that their domitors will manage these situations appropriately. Kindred are undead, meaning their bodies are essentially lifeless, resembling corpses in their natural state. They don't need to breathe, their skin is cold and ashen, and their hearts are still. This undead nature poses challenges when interacting with mortals, but these can be mitigated through the use of the Blush of Life, a vampiric ability that allows them to channel blood into their body, stimulating human characteristics like a heartbeat, body warmth, and breath. They don't have blood in a common understanding, instead it is vitae, the term used to describe blood, though it carries a far deeper meaning than the simple mix of plasma and cells that flows through mortal veins. Once consumed by a vampire, blood is mystically transformed into vitae, the very substance that fuels their unlife and grants them extraordinary abilities. This transformation gives the blood the power to form blood bonds, create new vampires, children, and draw the attention of other supernatural beings. Vita is darker, thicker, and has a rich, syrupy consistency. It retains the familiar metallic scent of blood, but also carries a subtle sweetness, much like desert wine. Vita is also far more potent than ordinary blood. While a vampire's body contains the same physical volume of blood as a mortal, the amount of vita they hold is more concentrated. The vampire's blood potency determines the maximum amount of vita they can carry. Various vampiric creatures can derive vita from sources other than blood. The Chihuateteo feed on breath, the Formosae on misery and self-hatred, the Mnemophores on memories, and ghouls on raw flesh. Despite these diverse feeding methods, they all convert their prey's essence into vitae, and they are all non-kindred type of vampires. Notably, the Strix are believed to originate from a realm devoid of vitae, which fuels their envy and hunger for it. The Strix, plural striges, also known as the birds of Dis or nemesis, are mysterious owl-like creatures with a special connection to vampires. In game there is a separate trait called humanity. This is a score which represents how close a kindred remains to their human nature, to specific people vital to them, and how easily they slip away from human concerns and instead towards the whims of the beast. Upon being embraced, vampires enter a state of stasis, where their bodies remain unchanging. Any wounds they suffer are healed by blood, and each night they rise in the same physical condition they had at the moment of their embrace. Over time, this extends to their mental state as well, making it increasingly difficult for older vampires to adapt or learn new things. The transformation goes beyond the physical, as vampires undergo profound intellectual and emotional shifts. They became predators, driven by a primal force known as the beast. The beast reacts fiercely to hunger, anger, and fear, relentlessly attacking the vampire's self-control. When overwhelmed by the beast's demands, the vampire may enter a frenzy or suffer Rotschreck, driven by uncontrollable fear or rage respectively. In extreme cases, vampire can succumb entirely to the beast, falling into wassail, a permanent state of frenzy. In this state, they lose all traces of humanity and become little more than mindless killers. Many kindred believe that the moment they are embraced is when the beast grows. For fledglings, it's often a feeling of having lost a vital part of themselves and replaced with something indescribable and lingering. The beast is a constant reminder of the tainted vampiric blood that now runs within them. It lurks within the consciousness of vampires, reminding them of the endless hunger and lust to devour more. There are many disciplines and lore sheets that help restrain the beast, but the best tool to fight against it is touchstones. These help ground the kindred and keep them connected to their humanity while chaining the beast. A touchstone is a connection of a vampire's requiem to the mortal world. Most touchstones are humans, but they can also be places or objects. The requiem is the condition of being kindred, the state of unlife, and the vampire's role in the all-night society of the damned. The requiem is often contrasted with the masquerade, the false life that each vampire builds up around themselves in mortal society as they cling to whatever remains of their humanity. Depending on their humanity level, some vampires can convincingly fake or even enjoy sexual intercourse while blush of life is active, though they do not experience sexual pleasure by default. Humanity also influences how human a vampire appears, with higher humanity levels making them look more sickly than dead, and lower levels enhancing supernatural traits like unnatural eye colors, making them stand out more in a crowd. Vampires do not heal naturally since their bodies are dead, but they can use the blood in their veins to mend injuries through active effort. Despite their power, vampires remain vulnerable to certain physical threats, with sunlight and fire being the most dangerous. They ignite easily and are destroyed almost instantly when exposed to sunlight. Outside these vulnerabilities, however, they are incredibly resilient. Bullets cause minimal harm, and their enhanced speed and strength make them difficult to injure or even target in combat. Camarilla vampires are trained to blend in and cultivate their humanity to more effectively mimic living people. In severe cases, the Camarilla typically calls upon the Ventru, who have turned Masquerade management into a refined science. The Ventru deploy whatever resources are necessary: cash, judicious use of dominate, or even machine guns to address and eliminate the problem. While the Sabbath does not have a formal tradition of the Masquerade, it relies on the enforcement by the Camarilla and maintains a similar patch squad managed by the Grimaldi Revenants. The Grimaldi are one of the 4 Revenant families in service to the Sabbath. They are the most valuable and humane of them. And Revenants are ghouls for whom the condition has become hereditary, and who are capable of generating vita within their own veins. In the end, the Masquerade is a story of survival, a tale of creatures who have outlived empires, witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, and yet remain hidden, watching from the darkness. It is a story of power and paranoia, of deception and secrecy, of the delicate balance between predator and prey. And it is a story that will continue to be told as long as there are those who walk in the shadows, living in a world that must never know they exist. The Masquerade is more than just a set of rules. It is the very essence of vampire existence. It is the thread that ties together all the stories of the kindred, the shadow that looms over every decision, every action. And as long as there are vampires in the world, the Masquerade will continue. A dance of shadows that never, ever ends. With all this being said, hopefully now we understand much more about vampires, the Masquerade, the world of darkness, their society, habits, and most important, their origin. There are many more stories to come, but it's a conversation of another exploration. Thank you for watching, and see you next time, Explorer.